to the Therapy Corner. Here at the Therapy Corner, what we try to do is educate, enlighten, demystify, all kinds of things that are related to the field of psychology. So today we have a very, very special guest. This is Susan E. Schwartz. She's a clinical psychologist and Jungian analyst, and she has a private practice. Let me put it that way. She has a private practice in Paradise Valley, Arizona. She's done many presentations over the years and has written many articles that are in publication. Just an amazing array of things. She's an incredibly talented and very bright woman. She has recently written a book, which is basically why I asked her to come on the show, because of the title of the book, which caught my attention. And it is The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, Father Desire, Father Wound. And this is published by Routledge, November of 2020. So again, welcome, Dr. Schwartz. How are you today?
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Always nice to have somebody who's doing something, let's say, a little different. And you're actually the second Jungian analyst I've had on. I had a Jungian analyst talk about the emotional impact of weight and that. But this, I have to tell you, this, when I heard your title, fascinated me because I have a passion for children, and I really feel there's so much that we could do in terms of parenting that we're not doing. And so any insight that you can provide, I would love to hear, and I'm looking forward to sharing with my audience. So air is yours.
Okay, well, let me begin a little bit with the idea that, not just the idea, the reality, sadly, that fathers have not been very present in their families or emotionally. They didn't learn it for generations. We could even look at the generations of in psychology and psychoanalysis. The people who were the founding people were actually fathers in name, not really fathers in the experience or relationally. That is including Jung, who had 4 daughters.
Oh.
Yeah, never wrote anything about daughters. One small essay on the father, only one. So I think that the father has been in the shadow, as in neglected, not paid attention to. And specifically, what I wrote about was the effect on daughters. I do believe this has a very strong effect on sons as well. Differently, but it does affect one's body, mind, and soul. So what I did in the book is bring in situations of people I have worked with, people I have known, cultural examples, what has gone on transgenerationally. I also speak about a couple of French psychoanalysts, Julia Kristeva and André Green, the latter who talks about the importance of absence. And I also have a chapter on Sylvia Plath, who was an American poetess, in the 20th century.
Oh, yes. The bell jar.
Herself.
Yes.
And wrote a very powerful poem called Daddy, which ends as, "You bastard, I'm through." So she had a lot of feelings. Why I bring that up is when the connection is not made in a strong enough way, the daughter learns to internalize, maybe I'm not lovable, maybe I should take care of father, maybe I hate him, maybe I hate myself. And much of the energy goes against the self, and then she can't create, love, procreate, find a place in life, and she can become quite bereft. So how you can see that evolving is through the dreams. The male figures in the dreams, the father figures through the actual relationships, through the partners that daughters choose to have. So these are evident. This absence is evident so many places. And the reason I spoke about absence is not just to be on the negative side, although I do speak a lot about betrayal and the negative father complex, but it is really with the hope that absence is filled. So if you think about it, absence is a space, and that space wants to be filled.
Right.
Yeah. If it gets to be filled, one feels fulfilled.
Right.
If it stays empty, one feels very empty and emptied out of imagination, desire, and then loaded with wounds.
I'd like to comment on a couple of things you said that really struck home with me. I also teach courses in psychology at our local college, and in it, I actually do spend time talking about the importance of the male figure, because I look at them and I say, you're the future parents of America. Listen up. But what occurred to me as you were talking was the absence of the father and the lack of the bonding. And it seems like most of the women that I have met, and I would say, yeah, it's mostly the women that I've met that have had borderline personality disorder, all seem to have missed that bond with the father. I'm not saying that all of them are that way, but it just seems like a large proportion of them, at least from my personal clinical experience. And there's clear problems there in trying to establish a love relationship with a man going forward because of that.
Well, I think that the borderline classification represents an insecurity and an instability of being able to regulate or access emotions. They just take over.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, I don't think it just appears with borderline. I think that there can be a very narcissistic tendency because one is not met. And
Right.
so if you're not met, what do? But you keep looking in the mirror, like Narcissus, trying to find yourself.
Right.
Because you were not seen. It's a very awful thing to not be seen. So when you say, you can see it appearing in the students, or you can see it with other women, I think it's kind of a dynamic. When the daughter is not seen, how is she looking at the father? So he's also used to having maybe a power position or patriarchal, not relational. So the whole world then, our worlds, get unbalanced. And even when you say borderline, it's the lack of balance. However you slice it, whatever the diagnosis is, the absence leaves a lack of balance pretty seriously in the personality.
Yeah, as you're talking again, I'm sort of reflecting back on, interestingly enough, my very first wife, that she always complained about her father being absent because he worked for the Postal Service. And at that time, he worked on the trains. So he was always gone on the trains. So he wasn't home that much.
Well, it's a good example. What I speak about is the father who was absent like that, physically, but also the father who is absent emotionally. So he could be absent emotionally because he's just checked out.
Right.
He is depressed. He's within his own psychological world. Or he also certainly doesn't know how to relate to his daughter when she starts to grow up and have her own mind.
Right.
And then he starts to criticize her sexuality, her beauty, the tightness of her clothes, because he's threatened. What does she learn? What's the matter with me? Or she might learn, I hate him. I hate men. I hate this kind of person. And again, we're left with imbalance.
Right.
Yeah, Jung refers to, I said it a bit earlier, the father archetype, which are different images of father that we have in each culture, but also the negative father complex, which you could picture as like energy in the personality glomming together and creating one negative energy after another, after another, after another. So if you adulate men, masculine, or you're too much on one side or another inside of yourself, you're suffering from a negative father complex.
Yeah, again, it's interesting. You're triggering me all over the place here. I was thinking of a client that I was working with a few years ago, and she was in a marriage with a alcoholic husband who was emotionally abusive, and she was ready to leave. And she says, "I don't understand why I keep doing this." And I went, "Excuse me? Yeah, previous two husbands, also alcoholic, also abusive." And I said, "Tell me about your father." "Oh, he was alcoholic and abusive."
Yes, well, but so then one of the things that one does not learn is intimacy.
Right.
So it's much safer to be with somebody who's involved in the bottle than involved with oneself.
Right.
There is another aspect here too, which is that, there are a lot of single mothers who are raising children. There are a lot of people who have been divorced. There's been lots of sadness that the mother might have carried about her own father, about her, whoever she's with, that then get transferred to the daughter. So the daughter is inheriting
Right.
the psyche of the mother who did not attend to the absence that she had felt, her anger, her rage, absence. It's a whole area of lack that then, of course, goes to the next generation. And what does the daughter learn about relationships when the mother has not worked out what it was to be without a partner?
Exactly.
So, again, it's very, once you start to untwist it, it's got many, many ramifications. I also think, and I mention this a bit in the book as well, culturally, we suffer in the Western culture from a certain view of how is the father supposed to be. But we are not the only culture that is suffering that. There are many where the father is in this role, totally distant, totally removed, not paying attention to daughters. One, they don't count. They still don't count.
It's sad.
It's very sad. And then if we think about it, like you said with your class, you're the next generation. So what is being passed on to them?
Exactly.
Yep. I wanted to add one other thing. I was speaking with someone just earlier, a man who is speaking about his own worry about what is his male presence bringing about? Is he being present as a male? He's thinking about this. Okay, he's thinking about it and reflecting on, my father was really, like in your example, always working. He wasn't there. I never saw him really relate to me. So I feel, where is my male presence? And his conflict was, how do I balance my female, whatever that means, with the male? Because we are also in a very transitional world where one's sexuality inside and outside also needs to be fluid. So if you have the father who's too absent, and in that also too present, this kind of too patriarchal, how does the daughter learn her own feminine side in balance with the masculine? And how does the father honor the masculine aspects of his daughter? He could be threatened by them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you just said there, because this whole role of the father can either be very supportive in terms of helping his daughter recognize both her masculine and feminine sides, the strengths that she has inside of her, as opposed to under the thumb kind of, no, you're a little girl, you're going to wear skirts and you're going to play with dolls and, all this stuff,
Well, it's learned in the family, but it is really learned beyond the family. It's learned in all the institutions of our world, of our culture. It's learned in our certain Western way of being. It's learned in how we learn how to walk, how we're supposed to hold our hands, how we are supposed to sit. And it's very subtle. And it brings about a feeling of, it really is challenging to try to break through what one learned almost from the very beginning, as you say, and be able to stand for what you want yourself.
Yeah, it's a tough one. This is why, as I said at the beginning of the show, I'm just really upset with the kind of parenting out there, which is why in my class I really push parenting, because I myself, I had a physically abusive father in terms of discipline. I mean, he was supportive in other ways and creativity and things like that, but when it came to discipline, it was definitely abusive. And the blessing that he gave me was when I confronted him with that. I was about 40 when I did. I said, "Why did you do it? Why did you treat us this way, my brother and I?" And it was interesting. He didn't apologize. He simply lowered his head and he said, "I didn't know any better."
That's right. If you go back, and this is very Jungian in a way, which is the stories, the mythologies, the fairy tales of the world. In the fairy tales, every single one, the father is usually gone after the first paragraph. The daughter leaves the kingdom, the fiefdom, whatever it is. She never comes back. So part of her development is, one, having had the experience of a father for a short period of time. Every fairy tale, it's the exact same.
Right.
And then going on her own and learning her strength. She learns it by, I don't know, maybe she has to go hunting, she has to climb the mountain, but she learns about her own physical strength and her psychological strength. That is not just a fairy tale. That's a life tale.
Right.
But hopefully people, when they come into internal work, they will learn their strengths out of it. That's why actually I wrote the book, is about these are the things that we can learn and we can take on. There's one other thing I would say too. It's a question, and I do mention this in one of the chapters, that there is an incidence of autoimmune diseases that has increased tremendous amount in our world currently. The population that it has increased with, almost 80% are female.
Oh my goodness.
Why? Why was the very first patient of Freud's a female? And she was actually being abused by her father. So, I mean, it's in the history of the daughters who really need better attention from the fathers, and the fathers will benefit. because they lose as well.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Mhm.
I've been blessed with 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. They're all grown up and got their own kids now. I got 9 grandchildren, I think, at last count. But, I feel blessed in having had both and being able to actually encourage what you're saying, the masculinity and femininity on both sides, and not forcing gender roles on them. And very proud of my kids in terms of how they've developed. But as I look around and I see parents doing exactly what my father did, and this is why I love what you just said there, because yeah, there is, as long as we're alive, there's hope. There's the possibility to change, like I did. I was not the kind of parent my father was, because I recognized that it was not correct. And luckily, being in my undergraduate psychology, I learned how to be a better parent. But there is hope there. There is a chance to encourage the women as they grow to be all they can be.
No. But you see, I do think so. I think that the points apply in the woman knowing her own strength and using it, and the man and the culture, the culture for both being able to shift and change. And whatever their frustrations are, that there are places where they can bring it out and find themselves. One of the things that I always have liked about Jungian psychology is that it's not about pathology. It's about how you can expand and be all of yourself. So there's obstacles that are in the way. How are we going to move those obstacles? How will our entire culture find respect for each other? I mean, that's really what's at the basis of your example. It doesn't really work if you wear a certain thing or you don't wear a certain thing. That's superficial. It's the inner heart that really wants to be touched and learned about. The other thing I would add is that in my work, I'm always surprised when I ask, so what about your father? So there's usually kind of a break there. There's a sorrow of the daughter, never gets addressed by the father, never gets seen by the father. I think that some fathers are learning, wait a second, no matter how old they are, I have to go back and fix this situation. And many do that. And so there's our hope for sure. Yeah. But I think that I've always been struck by how little people talk about their mothers and how little in the psychological literature until maybe 20 years ago, and not even that much now, is written on fathers. On their responsibility, on their inner world, on their dreams, on what do they wish for their daughters. Very little on the responsibility of daughters. So it has become, the mother was the bad one. Yeah. So let's blame her. She didn't this and that. And that turns again into who's the one who's running the story here? All the men who didn't have fathers.
Right.
So it all goes underneath into the unconscious. Yeah. Hopefully now it's coming out more.
Yeah, I would hope so. I really enjoy what you're saying, and I'm focusing on the importance of the father, because you're absolutely right. There's so very, very little research done out there on the significance of the fathers. There's a short page and a half, I think, in my book that I lecture from, where talks about how fathers are responsible for instilling values and sexual boundaries and things like that, and that's about all it says.
Yes, but you see, even with that, it's very I would want to challenge it, because the father that's why I mentioned the word father archetype. So the father is the one in the sky who, throws down the thunderbolts, who makes the laws, right, who does this, who guides, who protects, who takes the daughter away from the mother and introduces the daughter into the world.
Right.
What if that is not the case? What if people learn to parent together and bring the daughter, they share, and they bring the daughter into the world together? And it's not just the father in a classical way. It's not just too many mothers. I've heard it so many times. Well, I asked him, I thought, but your child is both of yours. What do you have to ask him?
Right.
See? And it becomes still the mother or the mother figure runs the story.
Right.
Where's the father? He's pushed aside. Now he's excused, and we are back in the same old routine.
You in your book, you mentioned something about therapists and the transference countertransitions.
Yes.
In the couple of minutes we have left, could you talk about that? Because me as a therapist, I want to hear this.
Okay. Well, it's been my experience. Actually, I'm writing from my own experience. Many people have projected the father onto me.
Oh.
Yes. Be they male or female. And I'm fine with that because I want to know what that experience was really like. And I think that if female analysts and therapists recognize that they're not just going to get a mother projection, that they will also get a father projection or the absent father projection, and to be able to handle that and to be able to respect it and make something from it, I think is very important. Because even though one is, you might look female, but we have all these aspects inside of us. And I think it allows the person in therapy to project onto the analyst of whatever sex, whatever they want. They can project that absent father. So it was something that I had noticed. And that also is not written about very much. Equally, the mother, of course, can be projected onto a male therapist as well.
Sure, absolutely. I found that a few times, especially where just in the last, I'd say 5 years, I've had about 3 women who lost their fathers, and they were very attached to their fathers. And they connected with me as the father figure, helping them to work through that process. And it was really interesting because they were clearly projecting the father image onto me. Obviously they were younger than me, but that helped.
Yes, but I would just add one thing in what you're saying, in that you said they were very close to their father. But what does that mean? When you piece it apart, very close. Were they over-identified? Were they the little girl? Were they the sweetie? Could they be all of themselves? Did they learn to stifle their growth? Are they trying to, by working with you, are they trying to find something in addition to what they have lost? Because
good point.
when the father dies, you lose what you never got.
Right. You're right. So right. Well, I hate to bring this to an end. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, but I'm afraid our time's running out, and we're going to have to end it here. So for our listening audience, I hope you enjoyed meeting here with Susan Schwartz, licensed psychologist in Paradise Valley, Arizona, talking about Jungian concepts, and especially in regards to the father figure. So again, thank you for watching. Enjoy your lives and stay safe and stay well. And thank you for watching the Therapy Corner, and look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.